Hey y'all, I'm back with another video. So, just to continue on my journey, in the middle of this series of unfortunate events and all the chaos in my life, I was still trying to date. Maybe I'm stupid. I don't know. Glutton for punishment. But I was doing the online thing, and I got to tell you, I've been on more first dates than I care to recount. And it's challenging, shall we say. I don't want to discourage anyone because I have recently found a very lovely boyfriend and I'm super grateful and happy. But I had to put in the time. Now, maybe you'll hit the jackpot on the first round. Maybe I just had a lot to learn and clear, which is really kind of what I think was going on. I learned so much. And as I mentioned in one of my other videos, when I see something I haven't, I don't recognize, I haven't come across that before, I'm like, well, what's that? And then I start doing research. And, people are hurting and people are, doesn't not to judge, but they're messed up, right? And I'm not blaming them. I was a hot mess, for most of my life. And I was, because we get all these mixed messages as children in our childhood. So, I came across, naturally, when you're talking about attachment styles, avoidance, people with avoidant attachment style. And, if you've done any research into that, it's because they usually, the typical, scenario is they had a parent that was physically present, but emotionally absent. So they learned that it wasn't safe to share their emotions because they were never comforted. And, ask yourself, which feels worse, to like cry and not be comforted, or to just not cry, because why be vulnerable if you're not going to get your needs met? So over time, people learn to not show their feelings, and then they learn to almost not even feel their feelings. Because if you, which is worse again, to feel really sad and feel like crying and, be ignored and, not be afraid to express it because, might could be a parent too, or like, if you cry, boy, I'm going to give you something to cry about. I've heard that actually for real. Um, so they learn to shut down their feelings, right? It's not safe to connect. It's not safe to be vulnerable or show your feelings. So that, and then they also, the other flip side of that, scenario is they also learn, that they have to take care of themselves. Nobody's gonna, take care of my feelings. I have to take care of myself. It's the lone wolf. And that's, it takes a lot out of you to feel like you're all alone in the world. So not only does it feel unsafe for them to connect and be vulnerable, but they really can't deal with other people's feelings because they're like, listen, all I can handle is taking care of me. I don't have any extra energy to go around to take care of you too. So it's just too overwhelming for them. But if you are somebody who really wants to connect in a meaningful way, who wants to feel close, then that's painful, because avoidance will tend to like, they're excited at first. They, that we all want to connect. We all, we're human. We're not lone wolves. And so they want to have that connection, but then it starts triggering those fears, and disappointments in childhood. So then they withdraw. So that's, it's just disappointing if you're someone who's trying to have a healthy relationship. I'm not saying I'm perfect and I don't have my own issues. Of course we do, but at least I'm a little bit conscious and I can recognize something in myself, and am willing to at least do the work to clear it and get healthy. And then, of course, you've got your anxious attachment people who, just want to swallow you whole because, if you don't meet their needs, then, or if they perceive that, you're not meeting their need, or if you don't want to jump in with 2 feet, then they get anxious. And then, that's not something I'm really wanting to sign up for either. I used to be that way. Actually, I was the worst possible combination. The fearful attachment style person is the person who's like anxious on the one hand, but then they're avoidant on the other hand. It's just like this push me, pull you. So I'm sure I was a total freaking nightmare for the poor men who knew me way back in the day. And I had childhood stuff for that, right? I was sent to boarding school. So I had, the anxious part because I was like physical abandonment. And then also when I was home on vacation, my parents were emotionally unavailable. So I was a total soup sandwich, a hot mess. But I'm better now. Been working on myself. So I dealt with those, and then recognizing, like I said, the neurodivergence, and, just doing research on that. I mean, that's not to judge someone who's on the spectrum, but it's just I have done research about relationships where one partner's neurotypical and one partner's neurodivergent. And it's a very challenging scenario, right? Because the neurotypical is looking for emotional connection in ways that the neurodivergent may just not be capable of, and that stresses the neurodivergent person out. And so then it's just like if you're always wanting something that just they can't give, it's not because they're withholding or they're avoidant or they're being a jerk. They're not wired that way. So that's painful scenario as well, right? So learning to recognize those signs, and then the actual narcissists who, just want to, love bomb and then immediately start gaslighting or break, devaluing. Yeah, that's the word. So it's and then there's just people who, because of our social media now and the online dating thing, it's almost like now with the swipe left and the swipe right, it almost feels like add to cart, delete from cart, right? It's like, it's nothing personal. It's like people are seeing, men and women see the other sex, or same sex, whatever you're into, as a commodity rather than a person, right? So wow, it was a lot. And I've got some really funny stories, which I don't know if I'm going to share or not, because I'm not sure if that's too personal for the other person. But some of them you're just like, wow, like that's just crazy. I actually had one situation where the texting was so good, and it was so like seemed emotionally intelligent. And I was like, wow, like I feel more connected to this person than anybody since my partner passed away. And then I was talking to a friend of mine. I said, it's almost like too perfect. Like I almost wonder if it's like a bot or something, And then I actually had an in-person date with this person, and it was, I don't know if you ever saw that movie. I think it was Roseanne I think it was Roxanne in the 90s. It was with Steve Martin and Daryl Hannah, and she was in love with the cute guy, right? But he was as dumb as a box of rocks, and Steve Martin was not good looking. In the movie, he had like this giant nose, but he was like super romantic and poetic, and he would write these love letters for the cute dumb guy to give to Roxanne, and then she's like falling in love with this guy that's not writing any of the stuff. It's not really him. So I show up on this date, and it was just like that. It was like a comedy, It's like he was not able to converse with me in person the way he was, when it was virtual or by text. And so after my date, I was just talking to my son, who's like 31 now. We can, don't share too much as a mom, but you can share some stuff, right? And he goes, oh yeah, there's a South Park episode about that. You know, this in the South Park episode, the girl texts her boyfriend. He says, oh yeah, you just copy and paste that, put it in chat GPT, it generates a response, and you copy and paste it back into the texting app and send it back to her. And all her girlfriends, she would read his responses, which were generated by AI, and go, oh, he's so sweet. Oh, so there's just so much to contend with out there now. Like, finding authenticity is priceless, you guys. It's just priceless because there's so much fakery, so much bots, AI, and then you just got like the regular damage that people have faced through going through life. So anyway, like I said, I'm super grateful. I feel like maybe my karmic cycle is being like wrapped up, and things are the fog is clearing, and I'm coming out the other end, which is maybe why I'm doing videos now. I'm not sure. But when you're in the darkness of it and the heaviness of it, you're not really inspired to talk about it in that moment. It's kind of like when you've come through it and you're like, okay, now I have a little bit of perspective, and I've got something maybe useful to offer. about my experiences, but just know, like, authenticity is aces. It kind of trumps everything, because I'd rather have a person who's being transparent and authentic, even in breakdown, than to be pretending that they're on top of the world. Um, I want something real, and I want something real with my community. And so if you have any stories to share, funny date stories, disappointing date stories, just life in general, please comment below. And if you're inspired to join my school, then do that too. And I'll catch you on the next video.